Most people use Claude reactively. The cover letter is due, they open Claude. The email is hard to write, they open Claude. The piece of research is too big, they open Claude. The work shows up, they reach for the tool. This works fine. The cover letter gets written, the email lands, the research gets summarized. But it caps the value Claude can give you because every conversation starts from scratch. There is no carryover, no accumulation. The Claude that wrote yesterday's email is the same Claude that wrote the email 2 months ago, because nothing in between has linked them. There is another way, not as a tool you reach for, as a practice you run, daily. Same shape, different content each day. The Claude you talked to in week 12 knows things the Claude you talked to in week 1 didn't. Not because the model has changed, because you've been building context that compounds. 3 practices. That's the episode. 3 ways to use Claude as a daily practice. 4th in the cues format. The first taught you that Claude reads English, not commands. The second taught you to stop Claude inventing things. The third taught you how to riff inside a conversation. This one is different. This isn't about a single conversation. It's about the rhythm you set across them. Before the 3 practices, the principle they share. Each conversation you have with Claude is information. Most of that information evaporates the moment you close the tab. The next conversation starts from 0. You re-explain. You re-establish. Claude responds well, but to a stranger. The practices that follow don't fix that by themselves. What they do is build a habit of saving the context somewhere outside Claude. A doc, a note, a scratch space in your dashboard if you've built one. Each practice ends with you writing 1 or 2 sentences down. The next time you run the practice, you start by pasting yesterday's note back in. Within a month, you have a quiet record of your week as told to Claude. Within a quarter, you have a record of how you actually work. The kind of record you would never write on purpose, because it accumulated as a byproduct of doing the work. That is what compounding looks like. Not Claude getting smarter, you getting clearer about what you are doing. Practice 1. The morning brief. 2 minutes. First thing, before email, before any other work. You open Claude. You paste your 1-paragraph status from yesterday. You add what you are starting today. You ask Claude 1 question. The question matters, not what should I do today? That puts Claude in the planning seat and you in the receiving seat, which is the wrong shape. The right question is, given this, what am I missing? Or what would a sharp outsider notice about this? Or what assumption am I making that I have not named? Claude responds in maybe a paragraph. You read it. 90% of the time, it confirms what you are going to do anyway, and that is fine, because confirmation is information. 10% of the time, it surfaces something you hadn't seen. Those 10s add up. You close the conversation. You write down the one thing the conversation surfaced, or the fact that today was a confirmation day. That note becomes the start of tomorrow's morning brief. 2 minutes. Every working day. The accumulation is the practice. A short note on what the morning brief actually changes. The reactive operator opens email at the start of the day and lets whatever is loudest dictate the next hour. The morning brief inserts a buffer between you and the inbox, 2 minutes long, just enough to remember what you were doing yesterday before the day decides for you. Over time, the brief becomes the moment your day gets named. You enter the inbox knowing what the day is for, instead of letting the inbox tell you. That is a small thing the first time you do it. It is a large thing the 40th time. This is also where the moves from the riffing episodes start to compound. You are having a real conversation, daily, with carryover. The /BTW insertions, the no-but redirects, the meta-naming. All available, and you get fluent at them because you use them every morning. Practice 2, the end-of-day audit. 5 minutes. Last thing before you stop working, you open Claude, You paste your morning brief's intent for the day. You tell Claude what actually happened. You ask Claude to notice the gap. The question is, what is the gap between what I said I would do and what I did? Not in a judging tone, in a curious tone. Claude is not your performance reviewer. Claude is the second voice who sees the day in the cold light while you are still close to it. Claude responds, maybe the gap is small, maybe the gap is big. Maybe the gap is exactly what you would have noticed anyway. But sometimes Claude notices something you didn't, a meeting that pulled an hour you hadn't budgeted, a piece of work that got pushed for the third day running, a thing you said you would do this week that didn't make it onto today's plan even though tomorrow is Friday. The audit takes 5 minutes. The note you write at the end is one sentence about the pattern, if there is one. That note compounds the same way the morning note does. After 3 weeks, you can see your actual operating pattern instead of the one you imagine you have. The reactive operator uses Claude. The deliberate operator practices with Claude. Practice 3. The weekly review. 20 minutes. Sunday evening or Friday afternoon or whatever day you have actually held the line on for the last 3 months. You open Claude. You paste every morning brief note and end-of-day audit note from the past week. You ask Claude to be the friend who is not in your week. The friend who, if you described last week to them over coffee, would say one of 3 things. 1. You are doing too much. 2. You are doing the wrong things. 3. You are doing the right things and you are not seeing it. Claude reads. Claude responds. The response is rarely a surprise. The thing that has been pattern emerging across the daily notes shows up as a paragraph. The week becomes legible to you in a way it was not when you were inside it. This is the practice that, more than the other 2, changes the texture of your work over months. Not because of any single weekly review, because the cumulative effect of 50 weekly reviews is that you have a record of your year as told by your own attention. That record is unusual. Most people do not have it. The people who do tend to be the ones whose work compounds in ways other people find mysterious. A note on why this works. Because the 3 practices look small in isolation, each practice on its own is mild. 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 27 minutes total in a week. That is 1% of your working hours. But the practices share context. The morning brief refers to yesterday's note. The evening audit refers to the morning brief. The weekly review reads all 5 days at once. Claude is doing the same work each time, but the inputs accumulate. By week 6, the Sunday review is reading patterns the daily notes did not name. By week 12, the morning brief is starting to surface concerns from 3 weeks ago that you had forgotten were live. Compounding does not feel like much at first. That is its nature. The first 30 days, you will wonder if it is doing anything. By day 90, you will start to notice. By the end of a year, if you have kept it up, you will have something most operators never build, which is a memory of your own working life that you can actually examine. 3 ways operators bounce off this practice. Worth naming so you can spot them in yourself. Failure mode 1, skipping the writing down step. The morning brief, the evening audit, the weekly review. None of them work without the small written record. If you have the conversation with Claude and then close the tab without saving anything, you have had a nice conversation and built nothing. The note is not optional. The note is the practice. Failure mode 2, asking Claude to plan instead of asking Claude to notice. Most people instinctively phrase the morning brief question as, "What should I do today?" That puts Claude in the wrong chair. Ask Claude to notice what you might be missing, not to decide what comes next. You are the decider. Claude is the second eye. Failure mode 3, treating it like a productivity system. If you start optimizing this practice as a system, you are missing the point. The practice is small precisely so it does not become a thing you maintain. 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, across a week. If you find yourself building elaborate structure around it, the structure has become the thing, and the practice has become its servant. The compounding is not Claude getting smarter, it is you getting clearer. If you want to try this, here is the smallest first step. Start with the morning brief, just the morning brief. Do not try all 3 at once. Open Claude tomorrow morning. Write 3 sentences about where you are. Ask Claude one of the 3 questions named earlier. Read what Claude says. Write 1 sentence down somewhere you will see it again. That is the entire week 1. Do it for 5 days. If on day 5 you feel like the practice has been wasted, you have lost 10 minutes of your week. If on day 5 you feel like it has changed something about how you are entering your work, you have the foundation for adding practice 2. Add the end-of-day audit on week 2 if week 1 held. Add the weekly review on week 4 if week 2 held. 3 weeks of foundation before the full practice is in motion. Start small, hold the line, let the compounding do its work. If you remember nothing else, remember this. 3 practices, 3 timescales. The note is the practice. The compounding is the point. That's the episode. See you in the next one.